Hi, we are going to move on to another topic today under the reading skills and strategies, which is called as informational transfer from non-linear text. All right, so the learning objective for today is by the end of the lesson, students should be able to apply the strategies of informational transfer by answering comprehension questions based on visual text. Now, what is informational transfer from nonlinear text? It is actually referring to answering questions, comprehension questions based on visual text or nonlinear text such as table, bar chart, graph, pie chart, and other types of visual text. Informational transfer includes the strategies of describing visual, extracting data, and also appraising information. Okay, so let's take a look at the strategies of informational transfer one by one. The first one is describing visual. For describing visual, you're required to provide some sort of description on what the visual text is all about. So the chart, the graph, table, or figure is already given to you. So you need to describe what that particular visual text is about. So in describing visual, you usually see these kind of questions. For example, what is the bar graph about? What type of information is being presented on this pie chart? How do you describe the table above? What does the visual represent? So see, the list of questions are basically asking you the same thing, which is to describe what the visual text is about. So in order to answer the questions just now, there is an answering formula that you can use. It is a combination of you identifying the type of visual, the verb, and also the full label of the visual given. First of all, you need to identify the type of visual. So what type of visual are given to you? Is it a bar graph? Is it a pie chart? Is it a table? Is it a figure? Okay, so if let's say you cannot identify the visual text, you can just refer to the visual as the visual. Okay, so you begin with the type of visual first, and then these are some of the verbs that you can use in order to show a description. For example, the bar graph represents, the pie chart displays, the table shows, the figure presents. Okay, so you can also use illustrates, describes, and other types of descriptive verbs. Now, it is then followed by the full label of the visual. So where do you get the full label of the visual? It is already given together with the visual as well. So if you see the visual, you can actually identify the full label that is usually put either on top of the visual or the bottom of the visual. Okay, for example, the percentage of obese people below 30 years old in 2017. So, in conclusion, the answering formula is just you combining or describing everything that you see from the visual text. For example, the figure displays the total number of identity theft between 2014 and 2017 and the method used in theft cases. So these information can be obtained from the visual text itself. So here's an example of a question that requires you to describe the visual. What type of information is being presented on this pie chart? The answer should be a combination of the type of the visual, the verb that shows description, and also the full label of the visual. So as you can see, the answer here is the pie chart presents, or you can also say shows, displays the percentage of expenditures for state and local governments. The percentage of expenditures for state and local governments is already given as the label of the visual. So you can just copy from the label itself. All right, the next one is extracting data. So for extracting data, you are required to extract specific information by identifying the trends that are notable or obvious from the visual text. It's usually referring to aspects such as more, most, highest, less, least, lowest, and etc. And sometimes in extracting data, you are also required to do simple calculations. For example, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and also dividing. So here is a list of examples of questions that require you to extract data. For example, what is the main factor for parents to choose a service? What is the type of expenditure that costs the least? Order the causes by enrollment from lowest to highest. If the total spending is 50,000 ringgit, how much money was spent on highways? So you see, the top three questions here, they require you to provide the answer for the trends. So notice the words such as main factor, cost the least, enrollment from lowest to highest. So these are requiring you to identify the trends. So the last question, if the total spending is 50K, how much money was spent on highways? This, in order to know this answer, you need to do a little bit of simple calculation. So here is an example of extracting data question. Approximately how many more students are in econ than in physics? So you have to look at the visual text and find the difference in the amount of enrollment between the subject econ and physics. So basically here you need to do a simple calculation, and in this sense it is subtracting. So the amount of enrollment in econ minus the amount of enrollment in physics. So example of answer is like this. There are 200 more students in econ than in physics. So 337, which is the total number of enrollment for econ, minus 136, which is the total number of enrollment for physics. And then you will get the 200 answer. And the last strategy under informational transfer through visual text is appraising information. So in appraising information, you are expected to examine information in order to judge its credibility, the value, and or relevance in specific contexts of the visual. So these are some of the examples of the question that requires you to do a little bit more of examination or analysis. How does the bar graph help you to identify which faculty had the highest spending? If we want to know the ways to alleviate the problem of rising living cost, would this pie chart assist you with information? Why or why not? So not only that you are required to refer to the visual text in order to identify what was requested, but you are also expected to provide your own explanation. So here is a combination of information that you get from the visual text, and also you're using a little bit of your own common knowledge, okay, or background information in order to justify your answers. So here's an example of appraising information type of question. So looking back at the visual text on expenditures for state and local governments just now, imagine as if you received this kind of question. If you wanted to identify the ages of the state and local government officials, would this pie chart help you? Why and why not? So you have to look at the pie chart. Does it really help you to identify the information that was required by the question? The answer is no, the pie chart does not help. So what is the reason? You need to justify based on your common sense and also based on the information given in the visual text. No data actually exists on the ages of the officials. Why? Because the chart only displays the percentage of expenditures for state and local governments, nothing about their ages. So that's all for the lesson on informational transfer. So hopefully, basically, you get some ideas on what it requires you for you to find out the answers of comprehension questions based on the information given from visual text. See you in the next lesson.